Yo. Welcome to F1 F Off, your audio pit stop for F1 news, interviews, and race reviews. I'm your host, Idris.
I'm your host, Gabe, and I just burnt my tongue.
2 weeks in a row, y'all. 2 weeks in a row.
Ooh.
Yeah, dude, that looks pretty piping hot, man. Yeah. Well, at least is the flavor like now integrated with your tongue?
I mean, hopefully I can taste it. It's ginger and probiotics. Ginger is a pretty strong flavor profile, so it should be able to come through. Yeah. Oof.
Would you consider ginger spicy?
No, I wouldn't consider it spicy. I would consider it kind of peppery, I guess. You could say it's kind of has I feel like it kind of activates your tongue in a similar way that pepper does, where it's just kind of like I don't know. I mean, some people consider pepper spicy. I don't get that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's more of like I think peppery and smoky are kind of like a similar sort of flavor profiles. Just anything that's like kind of real gritty and kind of earthy and gravelly sort of, you know.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I don't think ginger's spicy. Do people say ginger's spicy?
Yeah, people say ginger's spicy. I think it's sweet, and it just has like a nice activation on the tongue, you know, like similar to Pop Rocks, but like much more subdued. You know what I mean? So
sure.
I like it. I love ginger.
Do you see that Oreos has a new? They call them Space
Dunks. They're delicious. And
100%. The thing is, it's like I don't know if the Pop Rocks adds enough. If they were like more, if there were more Pop Rocks in it, and so you got the noise, that was perfect. Like just ASMR for the podcast right there.
But then technically, space is silent, right? So you should have the Pop Rocks, and then you just hear nothing, but you feel the sensation, right?
Yeah, I guess that's, Come on, Oreo.
Yeah.
Who owns Oreo? What is that company again?
Clearly not an astrophysicist.
Yeah,
Nabisco.
Clearly. That's right. Lauren makes these great little Oreo truffles, and then so we're going to try some different flavors with those. They're really, really good. But yeah, so how are you doing? Like, I guess.
Yeah. I'm Gucci. Life is good, man. Yeah. Especially after this last weekend, because we now know that the Formula One season is upon us, right? And this is really exciting. This is like crunch time for me, though, right? It always feels like this. I don't know if it feels like this for you too, Gabe. But anytime we hit the week of preseason testing, a season of DTS drops, and we also have like all the F1 press coverage like the week before the first race, and it's just like a lot of Formula One to consume in one time. I really wish that Drive to Survive would drop maybe like beginning of February, right? To kind of like get you ready, that sort of thing. Yeah. It's just too much for me. I don't really like binging anymore. I can't do it. I don't have time to do it.
We started it last night. I think we got 3 or 4 episodes in.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to talk about it in a different episode.
Yeah.
But I can say right out the gate, it's kind of hilarious how like the first few episodes, like, they have those moments where it's like, oh, like, are they going to make it? Are they going to do the thing? And like, you think like, oh, they're fighting for a win. It's like, no, it's like, oh, you made it to P2. Yeah. Like you made it to P3. Yeah. And it's just like, oh yeah, because Max was winning everything. So like we're not going to get any of those episodes where it's like, hey, so and so's first win. He's been craving it ever since he's been in karting. You know what I mean? Like they have all of that. I will say the intro of it is pretty fun. I like the way they approached it.
Yeah.
And so far I haven't heard that generic crowd cheering noise that they did last year. Like literally, Laura and I were sitting there watching it, and I counted on my hand like how many times. I think I counted. They used it like 8 times within the span of like a 2-minute segment. It was just like, can you not get crowd noise like recording at these races? Like you're there clearly, just have somebody in the crowd with a microphone, But anyway, I'm excited to see the rest of it. I'm not going to say too much more until you get a chance.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But we're definitely going to cover that in an episode in the next couple of weeks for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I am interested to see what what kind of perspective they take for this season, because I don't know about you, but maybe the Drive to Survive luster is wearing off a little bit. Um, and I say that because, like, I mean, we said this last week, this offseason has just been so ridiculous that I don't know if they can truly, like, I guess, one up this previous offseason, right? One thing, like, DTS is nice because it's kind of like a time capsule of things that we forgot about from last season. You'll say, like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, right? But I think DTS sometimes misses like the context of other things going on around, right? Like what is the zeitgeist at the moment, right? What is like the F1 culture feeling, social media, what is all that saying at the same time, right? And it lacks that element, you know, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I will say they deal with the Nick DeVries, Danny Ricciardo thing pretty early.
Okay.
And oh man, it just not okay. So not being a person that follows the sport, right? If you like just watch Drive to Survive, which I don't know who those people are, but I'm sure there's some people out there.
Sure.
You know, they'd be like, oh, like, yeah, Nick DeVries, like, oh, like, yeah, wow, he's really struggling, but like he was like a, you know, fast guy, and like he should be, you know, blah, blah, blah. But like sitting there, I'm just like listening to him talk about like how he's like, I'm gonna, you know, I'm more mature and I have more experience than Yuki, and I'm just like, oh no,
oh baby, oh baby,
oh no,
sweet summer child,
no. And of course, they have a lot of manufactured drama.
Sure.
Like
sure.
they talk about Danny Ricciardo. They show the thing when Danny Ricciardo was doing his that test session in the Red Bull after Silverstone, right? They have the film of all of that, and there's a moment where he just spins out because it's slightly raining, and even he was like on the track. He's like, yeah, it's a little slick in some places, and then he just goes, he just kind of does a little turn, and there's like Danny, and he's just like. You see the car like moving the wheel, but then not doing anything. And it goes on for like almost a minute long. And I'm just like, no, that would not take that long. And like, it was nothing. He just turned the car around and just kept going. So I'm just like, okay, DTS, calm yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Like pick your moments where you're going to be dramatic, because that is not a dramatic moment. That's not like a, oh no, like it was just a nothing burger that you turned into a dramatic moment to seem like the tension needed to get raised. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
That's the one thing that they do that I don't like. That and like cutting out some pretty significant things that like they should have had in. Like I remember the last season that Fernando Alonso was with Alpine. It was when Ocon had that win in Hungary, I think. And they just completely glossed over the fact that Alonso was like blocking Vettel and Hamilton like half the race in order to allow Ocon to actually get enough time to win. Like they just completely glossed over that. Like he literally would not have won that race if Alonso had not done that, because they were chasing him down so fast. It was insane. But so we'll see what comes. But yeah, no, we're here today to talk about preseason testing, Idris. So like the real stuff, the real Drive to Survive.
This is the real Drive to Survive.
This is
right?
the real Drive.
This is not the Gunter Steiner surviving to drive. This is the driving to survive. And this R.I.P. Gunter's career in tenure as Haas TP. You know, but
yeah. It's like is Drive to Survive the Drive to Survive that you have at home, and this is the real one? Like I guess I don't know how that works anymore.
I think that should be the title, just that right there, like comma, and this is the real one, right? But yeah, speaking of, man, this preseason testing was spicy, man. Like I think first off, like the timing of preseason testing is like for the personal things going on in my life is always awful. That I'm never able to like sit down and just watch like the 5-hour block, you know?
Same.
So I would just always catch the highlights, and I tune in here and there where I can. And man, first off, we just got to talk about, before we even get into like some of the performance data, are we still struggling with like sewer grates, like sewer covers? Really? Like I'm what, 3 times, twice?
I'm almost convinced that like there's got to be something going on. Either like there's some DTS person that's going out there and unscrewing them at night. Maybe there's some secret cabal of like anti-racing groundhogs or like, you know, moles that are like, you know, disturbing storm drains to like because they just want to sleep. Remember that episode of the Powerpuff Girls
Yeah.
where there's that guy that like molten lava guy that's deep underneath the city, just
Yes.
like, I just want to sleep. Go, shut up.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
that's what this are kind of. That's what I'm thinking. Like maybe it's just like some creature underneath the depths that's so tired of hearing cars driving over his house that he's just like, No, but in reality, apparently it was that the drivers for some reason were running wider on a turn than they normally do, and apparently that just just shook loose like I just think it's hilarious that like once again a Ferrari was the one that got damaged from a loose storm drain. It's just like it's their kryptonite apparently. Like
no, I think it was Carlos who did it, right? It was him in Vegas, and I think it was him again in preseason testing.
Was
it
him or was it? I thought it was Charles, but I mean either or, it doesn't matter. Like,
either way,
Ferrari.
right? It feels like for Sainz, it's like the sewer grates are his kryptonite, and then for Charles, it's just that one specific corner in Baku, right? Every single time it gets him, right? But yeah, no, Ferrari and sewer grates, name a more iconic duo,
right?
Wild. But I mean, they were able to get it fixed pretty quickly. Well, not pretty quickly, but I mean, at least like some preseason testing was still able to occur, right? When they weren't just like going flat out racing against each other in like the pre-race mode that they allowed all the teams and drivers to operate within. So, I mean, yeah. So let's just kind of hop right into it. I'm thinking what might be fun is if we just kind of talk about overall, and then maybe talk about some specific points, some specific moments or events that happened that kind of stuck out to us. So overall, I think the teams in general, they really brought their A game for this season. I think all across the board, all the cars look really good when it comes to performance. Well, except for one, and we'll talk about them. Two, actually. There's two we were going to talk about. But overall, I think most teams brought forward a really good package, kind of clearly inspired by the RB19, that dominant car that Red Bull produced last season. And you can see that we're starting to get to this point where we're starting to converge on a single design point, right? But then one of the teams in particular was like, and Red Bull, I think goes without saying, was like, nah, we're not going to stick with this. We're gonna change it up a little bit. So we'll talk a little bit too about Red Bull's new Sidepod concept, but that'll be in a little bit. But yeah, just in general, like really, really good performance. I think most teams were able to get some good laps in, except for I think Kick Sauber might have been the team that like got the fewest laps in there too. If not Haas. I know there's one team in particular who wasn't able to get as much.
So I'm looking at Kick Sauber had or I should say Stake. Well, on this website it says Stake F1, which is not correct. They had 378 total laps across all of them. RB was actually less. They had 366. Okay. I think it was Williams. Williams had 229.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. It was Williams. Yeah, because Williams they came in like last minute with some of their components for the car. So, did it make a difference for them? We'll see. But Gabe, overall, what did you think about this year's preseason testing weekend? Were there some big surprises? Were there some obvious duds?
Well, I think for me, usually like I was happy to see there wasn't like any huge crash incidents.
Yeah.
Like we've seen with like Alonso or some like I think like Logan Sargent had a couple of spins here and there, but there wasn't any like he was able to recover it, which is good because you want solid running. I mean, you really can get knocked way far back if you don't put in some solid runs. And even Williams, like they had those little trip ups, but they were able to put in enough laps to really be able to show that like they're pretty solidly in that midfield.
Yeah.
They're not going up, but they haven't really fallen back. The RB is what I'm really interested in, if I'm being honest. It's not completely, it's kind of hard to tell sort of where they were at, but I mean, Daniel Ricciardo's lap time was 131. That's still a couple of seconds off of the fastest, which was, Leclerc, or no, Signs fastest lap time was like 129.9.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I think like I'm really curious to see how they do. I mean, as an organization, they're supposed, like we were saying last episode, there's supposed to be like this new outfit, and like they're supposed to be like a new entity. They're not like tied to Red Bull as much as the sister team. So I am really curious to see what they do. I'm
Hmm.
glad that Aston Martin didn't completely flounder. I mean, I think people were expecting them to do a little bit more,
Yeah.
but they put in a decent running.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, it's kind of hard to, it's kind of really hard to say. I mean, the preseason testing is always kind of a mixed bag, because
Sure.
there will be teams that are super strong in preseason testing and then just completely fall on their face when the race ends up happening.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's
yeah.
true as that is. There are also some teams that just come in and just completely show their hand fully, right? Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
unfortunately, like the bottom feeders here, we're looking at Haas and Alpine. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Haas just seemed to make it, it just looked fine. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't see, I'm thinking about how the car performed last year versus what we're seeing this year, and it just
Mm.
kind of looks more of the same, you know? And look, Io Kamatsu, new TP, he let us know too. He's like, I expect us to be dead last. And, I think that's kind of the feeling from a lot of the articles and some of the data that people are
Hmm.
looking into right now. But the really shocking one was Alpine. Like,
Hmm.
I just was looking at some of the onboard, and it just looked like sluggish, right? It looks like a design that doesn't know what it's trying to do. Um, Again, the livery I think is fully indicative of that. But
Hmm.
it just seemed like, I don't know. It seemed like a Toyota Corolla rolling down the race circuit. And don't get me wrong, I love Corollas. It looked like a Corolla rolling down the race circuit
Uh-huh.
versus everyone else being in like at least like a Civic Type R. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
it just, I don't know. It feels confusing. I don't know what Alpine is trying to do here with their car and what
Mm.
kind of impact they think they can have this season.
Yeah.
It just feels like they need to kind of a rebuild
Yeah.
from the ground up.
Well, on that subject specifically, Will Buxton said, I read a quote that he apparently said this morning where he's like, Haas is, he's like, he was referencing Haas. He says, the expression, you bring a knife to a gunfight. He says, well, Haas brought a spoon.
Ooh,
And that's pretty brutal,
yeah,
if
yeah,
I'm being honest.
yeah.
And also, when I hear that, and I'm just like, okay, hey, so Dominicali, you want to talk about teams being competitive?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you literally have a team that is openly saying that they're going to be at the back of the grid and uncompetitive this year. Like, I mean, here's the thing. We know that there's somebody that's going to be there, but when a team is literally saying that we're going to be at the back, not saying like, oh, it's going to be a tough year, we're going to try our best. Like,
Mm-hmm.
most teams kind of like hold their cards a little close to the chest. Like, even if internally they know
Yeah.
like we're not going to be anywhere, they still try and put up a good face for the fans up front.
Mm-hmm.
Haas is not doing that. They're just
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, we're the losers of the season, so don't even bother.
Yeah.
It's like, well, then what's the point? What's the point
It's a
of you guys
bummer.
racing? Like, why are you even here?
Right.
Because like I think even like teams like HRT and like Minardi and stuff, like they would like kind of temper their expectations a little bit, but they
Yeah.
wouldn't be outright like we're the slowest on the track and we're gonna they would be positive. They'd be like, yeah, like
Yeah.
we think we're faster than the next team's up, and like we're gonna make some progress. But like Haas is just like, yeah, no, everything sucks.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, how can you guys still be here then? Like that sucks.
Yeah.
Like that's terrible. It's like it gives me the same reaction in my brain that when we hear about drivers who are like, oh, like this driver is really slow, but they got a bunch of money and that's why they're staying in the seat. And it's just like,
Yeah.
come on, like you're gonna be that blatant about it, like
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
and
feel
also
that.
like it's kind of like even with all of that paint missing off that Alpine, it's still
Didn't
like
do a
just
thing.
so slow. And so
Yeah.
like you guys, you might as well, if you're gonna go that slow around the track, it's like you might as well throw some paint on the car. Just have fun with it.
Yeah. It's just a bummer. It's just a bummer because, I think Pierre Gasly is a really solid driver. I think
Mm,
Esteban Ocon is a decent driver. Um,
mm,
I would say between the two, Gasly is the stronger driver of that pairing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't think they're going to be able to show much this season with the way that car was looking.
No.
I fully expect Alpine to actually drop in the standings from where they were last season. I think they finished up, I think they were fifth last year. I
Yeah.
could see them sliding to sixth, maybe not, maybe even seventh if they don't get it together.
Yeah.
And that's because another team really brought it. VCARB. I don't know why they're calling them RB. It's very
I know.
confusing.
I know.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate too how the commentators during all the preseason tests are just like, well, they literally were just like, and the debate is over. It's been decided. Everyone online has agreed that it's RB.
Like,
So
no,
yeah, and we're
no
just
one's
like,
saying RB.
what? I'm like, RB. I've never said RB. Like, yes, like I think well, Visa Cash App Racing Bulls has decided that they weren't going to be Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. They're just going to be RB. I think that's why they put the giant RB on the thing. But like I mean, honestly, here's the thing. RB doesn't really. It's when I say it, I feel like I'm about to say Arby's, but I haven't finished
I'm
it.
thinking.
You know, I mean, do they have the meats this year? Maybe. But like, I don't want to call them RB. It's just like it feels really, and especially because like, what's the Red Bull's car called? The RB20.
Yeah, it's
like,
yeah,
it's clunky. It's like
clunky.
you know, it's like if I don't know. I'm trying to think of an equivalent. It would be like if there was a team, like let's say there was another team on the grid that was called Aston Farton or something, you know, like or like they were just called Aston, you know,
or Mercedes.
Like, oh well, we're separate from them. Or yeah, like another team that was just called themselves Benz. Or like, or they call themselves Mercs. You know, it's just like, wait a minute, like, hold on, guys. Like, this is like the equivalent of last year with the AlphaTauri and the Haas. Like, basically looked exactly the same. Like, they had the same livery on track, and we were all like, are we going to be able to push them on track? It's the same sort of thing.
Yeah. Which made it even funnier whenever De Vries would crash into Magnussen repeatedly, right? And it's like, wait, are those the Haas's coming together? Oh, no. That's
the Haas coming together. No, wait. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I'm not a fan of it. I think VCARB is a lot more distinctive.
Yes.
It's a little more fun to say. It's like, you know, VCARB. Yeah. I don't know why, but it's just it works better, and like, you know, it's better than saying the Visa Cash App Racing. It's like that's too much of a mouthful. And it just, you know, RB doesn't look, you know, it just doesn't fit the look of this thing. Because man, we thought that car looked good in pictures. Oof, on track, that was even more spectacular.
That gloss paint.
Silver, oh, that's glossy silver paint.
Yeah. He's still my beating heart. Yeah. The image that popped into my head when you kept saying VCARB, like VCARBonaro pasta, like that's what's in my head now, and I think that's absolutely the picture that these guys should be rolling with for their.
I mean, they could call themselves Visa RB.
Yeah, Visa, something different.
That's a little better.
It's different, you know. Like I hear RB every single time someone said RB, I was thinking Red Bull. You know, like that's what it's been for since 2004, right? 2005, sorry, right? So. Ridiculous.
It's I don't think I don't really know how sustainable that's going to be. I can't imagine going forward. I mean, do they really think they're going to win a championship as RB? Like the RBs won it all. It's like no. They're going to have to rebrand that at some point or remarket it as for something, because I don't think that's a sustainable name. It's just, and it's weird to think about that, because you think, oh, they're going to do their talking on track, right? Because this is a race, but like every team, every manufacturer that's won has not really had a wonky name. You know what I mean? It's like it's always solid. Like even Braun GP, like that's memorable. You know, named after the guy. Like, you know, it's a last name. Like that's fitting. So I still think that they should call themselves Dietrich Racing.
Yeah,
you know,
Dirt.
That would be better. You know,
a Dietrich Racing team, absolutely. But yeah, I think I absolutely see VCARB or the RB, as everyone is saying. I see them moving up in the standings, in the constructor standings. Like absolutely. If Yuki and Danny aren't scoring points every weekend, I, then something is deeply wrong because that concept looks
Mm,
pretty solid. It looks
yeah,
closer to the RB. Here we go again. The Red
yeah,
Bull, the RB19 from last year, right?
right.
And it's going with the pull rod suspension at the
Mm-hmm.
front. So
I think a lot of
um,
teams did that, didn't they?
yeah,
A lot of teams
yeah,
made that switch.
and that's an aero more for an aerodynamic performance gain versus anything else. But
Right.
yeah, I think they could increase their standings in the constructors championship, and I see a couple teams really being they a couple teams really need to kind of watch their backs this year. I think Alpine, like I said, Alpine is one that's I see kind of trundling down the list. I see Haas doing the same. Williams, I think they have maintained their straight line speed from what a lot of the analysis is saying, if
Mm,
not gotten better with that. But straight line speed is only good enough for certain tracks, right? So
yeah.
and certain
Yeah.
corners, so or certain parts of the track, right? So we'll see what that turns
Mm,
into as points wise this year. Um, I think one big surprise for this year was seeing the Mercedes. First off, that livery looks really nice on track. It kind of like trips you out a little bit because you see a little bit of like the 2021 car. I think the W. Oh my God, why am I forgetting the name? W12, right?
mm,
You see that car coming down the track, and then like the camera angles up, and you see like the silver arrow of the nose. I think what's really cool about the Mercedes is just how the rear just seems to stick so much better now, right? Watching those
mm,
onboards was really, really fun to see how Lewis and George were able to take some of these corners a bit more confidently. And they even said it
mm.
themselves too, that things felt good with the car, that they had more confidence in it. And a lot of it was due to Mercedes, the design team actually listening to the drivers and pulling. I think it was actually Lewis who made the request more strongly than that of George, because maybe George said,
Right.
"Oh, I'll race anything, right?
Right.
Fly me." But for Lewis, I think he really like thrives in a car where the balance is more centered, right? Which makes
Yeah.
sense. So he, as a driver, is pulled more towards the center, so he has a better feel of where the car is, where the feet of the car are, right? The tires, right?
Right. Right.
Which makes
Right.
100% more sense, right?
Yeah, he said the driver position felt like he was kind of on the toes of the car because it would
Hmm.
push forward. They definitely corrected that for this year for sure. But well, honestly, if we're gonna talk about this though, we should talk about the other team that sort of flipped the script a little bit here, and that's Red Bull.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you want to start
because
on that, or you want me to
well, I
do a
mean,
deep dive?
really, I mean, if we're just gonna like put it into like bullet points,
Hmm.
essentially, like Mercedes tried this zero side pod kind of blobfish concept,
Hmm.
and it didn't work for them.
Hmm.
Driving position was weird, and it didn't really work the way that they had anticipated it work. But Mr. Adrian Newey had an idea, and he somehow came. They came back this year with. I wouldn't say it's a zero side pod
No, it's not.
concept, but it definitely borrows heavily from the sort of thought process of that, where it's like
Mm.
it still has the shape of a side pod for certain airflow, but like
Hmm.
there are like no air inlets traditionally like you would typically see. Like they're sort of like cupped up on the sides
Hmm.
of the car. Um,
It's like a stingray. Imagine like a stingray's mouth
yeah,
underneath, like
almost like a
this.
yeah, or
Yeah.
like a gill or
Hmm.
something. Like
Yeah.
it's yeah, and yeah, I think it caught everybody by surprise. I think that
Hmm.
was the big thing, the really the big technical change that people were, or the technical idea that people were interested in. There's that, and there's the Mercedes front wing,
Hmm.
which
Which
everybody
Merce-
has a lot of interest in.
which
So,
Mercedes always does funny things with their
mhm,
front wings, you know. So I think like they're kind of going back to basics here for them. That's their wheelhouse. So yeah.
right,
But
right.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So it was fascinating to see. I mean, like if you have this, if you remember from last year or the year before, and you think like, well, that clearly did not work for Mercedes like at all. Like, how is this going to actually function? But hey, when you
Mm.
got Adrian Newey making your design for you, like he'll make it work.
Mm.
And I think he probably saw some little stroke of genius or some idea in there that he
Hmm.
wanted to try and replicate.
Yeah.
And so he just went ahead and did it. And Yeah.
So,
Red Bull had had really really solid running
oh, really
this.
solid times too.
Yeah.
Like the gaps to people behind. Whoa, man, it's like, yeesh.
Mhm.
But yeah, on the Red Bull note, let's talk about the RB20. Absolutely, you're right about how that's structured. It's not exactly a zero side pod concept. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people online are saying, "Oh, it's just a zero side pod," and they just adopted from Mercedes. Like, no, no, no. I think there's some inspiration from it, right? But
Mm.
let's before we even talk about the design of the RB20, let's talk about the philosophy, like the differences in the design approach, the design development path that Mercedes took versus Red Bull, right? What Mercedes did, they came into 2022 from the 2021 season saying, okay, we're going to try to nail these regulations and we're going to try to maximize performance everything. Like just get as much of the performance benefits as we can gain, do it
Right.
now, right?
Mm.
And that is a very ambitious and lofty goal, right? Because
Mm.
what has to happen there is all the different variables that you're changing, right? Because it's not just the arrow and like the geometric envelope of the vehicle that's changing for the new era, right?
Hmm.
But you're also changing your engine design, right? So there's a whole new packaging you have to do with your power unit. There's a whole new chassis you need to think about, right? You need to think about the aerodynamics and the airflow underneath the car with your Venturi that you are developing and installing underneath the car, right?
Right.
So many different elements. And then you have to think about driver positioning. All these variables play together in some weird way in one formula, right? Formula One, right? That's why they call it that.
Right. Right.
And so Mercedes, for them to make that leap and grab those goals and like knock them out of the park was really, really lofty, right? Whereas you look at Red Bull, when they came from 2021 going to 2022, they kind of maintained like the same chassis for the most part, right? And then they tightened things up, got it to the point where they're like, okay, we feel very confident and comfortable about where we are as far as maximizing things within our existing chassis for the most part. And then from there, here we are in 2024, we can now go nuts with something that we think will really take us to the next level, right? Because you know
Mm.
that the other teams are seeing what we're doing and they're going to evolve, right? And converge onto our design point from our previous winning season, right?
Right.
But for us, we can't just stay here. We have to go to the next level, right? So
Right.
that's why I'm saying it's more of like an inspiration from the side pod design because they still have their side pods for the most part, but they went with this like shark mouth or stingray mouth kind of
Hmm.
scoop on the side pods, right? And then they have like these tiny side air inlets, like right
Yeah.
right where you would see traditional side pods, so or traditional air inlets, but just a different shape. So I'm
Right.
really excited to see this because what this tells us is that yes, there is something to the zero side pod concept, but the way Mercedes did it just was not the right development path, right? Because Mercedes had
Right.
to deal with porpoising. They had to deal with the driver's position being put forward a little bit more. They had to deal
Hmm.
with the cooling that their power unit required, right? Because there's a new
Right.
engine, new power unit designed for that season and everything. So, or this era. So, yeah, it just kind of shows that the design development path that Adrian Newey and Red Bull have been marching on for, I would say, for Adrian's entire career, right? I'm reading
Right.
his book, How to Build a Car, right now, and
Mm.
the path that he has taken in designing this car, he and his team, not just him, right? Um, but the path that they have taken in designing this car lines up exactly with what his design development path and philosophy um, is that, and it has been stated in his book, in his autobiography, right?
Hmm.
That you take a car, you evolve it. You don't just throw it out, right? You don't just go from year to year changing up your car design every single year. You
Hmm.
build a platform and then you develop that as much as you can, right? And then you
Hmm.
look to see what is the benefit of evolution versus revolution, right? And then from
Hmm.
there, if you need a full revolution, then you throw out the whole concept and start over again, right? But
Yeah.
this makes 100% sense, and I don't think it's as shocking to see this um, as some others may feel out in the F1 space.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Adrian Newey he never came across as a person um who wastes time when it
hmm
comes to him designing a car. Like he
exactly.
goes the path of least resistance, and the minute, if something comes up that is like, well, okay, yeah, no, like it's time to switch it up.
Yeah.
Because I think like that's something that you can bog down too far, where it's like, there you kind of butts up against that idea of like, if it ain't fixed, don't, or if it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Yeah.
That doesn't work in Formula One necessarily all the time, because things are constantly changing. And so like it might not have been broken last year, but next year it will be broken if you don't if you don't do something else.
Mm-hmm.
It's a constantly changing, evolving thing. So yeah, I am genuinely curious to see how Red Bull does this year, because I just if they're going to be super dominant, I don't think we're going to see it for at least a couple of races. Like if they win the first like 3 or 4 races, then I think we'll know, okay, like they're back on their, on their shit. But because was it last year or was it the year before? I think it was the year before. Remember at the beginning of 22, they both did not DNF'd in like the first race, for mechanical problems, and like everyone was like, oh man, like the
fall of Red Bull.
and then no, it's like, no, that doesn't happen. So like we'll see some stuff in Bahrain. We'll see kind of where everybody's starting from, but it's definitely not where they're going to finish. I mean, McLaren had a terrible start, and then they were like, by the time Silverstone came around, they completely flipped that script. So you never know what's going to change. I mean, and like, who knows, like, maybe Alpine will make some inroads and catch up. I don't know. I'm not sure. We know Haas isn't, because they're even insisting that they're not going to. They might as well just be, dude, we're not even going to bother to try and, win anything this year, because it's just not going to happen.
So, like, we won't even be at the races. Honestly, we'll just be at the factory working on next year's car. So
yeah, next year's car, and then after that, we'll work on the year after that. And like, whenever I hear a team say that, it's like, okay, well, sure, but like, if this one's a failure too, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's talk about Ferrari a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they were sort of, they had the top of the timesheets across the preseason testing. Obviously they had their battle with the manhole cover. But they put on a good show. They had a lot of bespoke aero rakes that they were using for aerodynamic checks.
So
cool. And also, I mean, I think the car is what's funny about it is it doesn't look as sinister as it did last year, and I think it's because like the red on the wheels, like kind of like it looks a little bit more, I don't know, it's a little more retro seeming, a little more fun.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like we'll have to know. I mean, it's unmistakably the Ferrari. I mean, like I don't know what, if you could just putting more red on the car is definitely gonna always gonna give that vibe. It definitely gives me a little less McDonald's vibes as I'm seeing it on track, which is good, because that's what I was worried about. Right. But also, like, I think it's kind of interesting how Carlos Sainz had like the fastest time over the weekend, and he is being replaced by Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, kind of weird for Ferrari, but I mean, hey, like, Lewis Hamilton.
Oh yeah,
it's not like Ferrari can't afford him. So
yeah, if you get the chance of recruiting like the statistically like most successful driver of all time, then yeah, you're gonna like you have to make some cuts, unfortunately.
Yeah. But yeah, they had some really good strong running. I think Ferrari tends to do this a lot of times in preseason. It'll be like, oh, the Ferraris are looking strong this year. Oh, I think they're going to be the contender. And then like they just do the Ferrari things during the season, and then they just like mess up strategy, run over manhole covers, have some sort of like weird, either some mechanical problem that only they're experiencing. It's always there's some like little form of self-sabotage that happens with Ferrari. It's but I think that this is something I was thinking about this too, because we had conversations about this before, how because Ferrari, because it has been so long since Ferrari has been on the top as far as the championship, right? They really need to get their stuff together because their sphere of influence, I think, is going to start shrinking.
Hmm.
They've always banked on being the one team that all F1 drivers want to drive for at some point in their life.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you have Mercedes having a period of 7 years of dominance, and then you have Red Bull, with this trajectory of another dominant period, all the young drivers in the karting and in, the lower formulas, like they're not
Mm-hmm.
looking up to Ferrari. They're looking up to Mercedes. They're looking
Mm-hmm.
up to Red Bull. Like
Yeah.
these are the teams that they grew up seeing winning,
Mm-hmm.
so Ferrari's really got to get
Yeah.
themselves together, because the kids that are coming of age now, like if they don't have any context for Ferrari winning championships and
Yeah.
being so spectacular and passionate, like it's going to lose their luster, and
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be harder for them to get people to want to be on their team. So
How
yeah.
long do you think they have to win another championship before they become irrelevant as far as like being the destination in that karting to F1 pipeline?
I would say their sphere of influence, if they're not winning anything and they're just kind of like meandering in the like kind of, outside of the top of the podium,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like maybe they could get away with another, I would say maybe another,
Like 4 or 5 years, maybe.
no, I'd say a little longer than that. I would
Mm.
say optimistically, I would say maybe another 10 years before they're just completely like who cares? If they don't win another one in 10 years, I don't think anybody's really going to care that much about Ferrari like they used to. I mean, obviously the Tifosi will, and like Ferrari fans might, but
Mm-hmm.
any and everybody else is not really going to, I don't really think they're going to care that much, or they're
Yeah.
not, they're going to be more excited to race for Mercedes or race
Mm-hmm.
for Red Bull. Because if you think about it, like most like think about it, like a lot of kids, a lot of teenagers that are racing in lower formulas now,
Mm-hmm.
who are like, what, 12, 13, 14, right? So by the time they get to like 23, 22, if they haven't witnessed like any sort of Ferrari success in that period of time, their only
Mm-hmm.
context is going to be who's won in the past 10 years and who's
Mm-hmm.
won in the next 10 years. And that's going to be Mercedes and Red Bull has been the past 10 years. So
Mm-hmm.
who's going to be the next 10 years? That's going to, I mean, who knows? We're going to see what happens. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's what I would say. I would give them that. I don't think and I don't think they're incapable of this.
Yeah.
I think that they certainly can. They so much of it is just, Red Bull taking a huge step forward and everybody trying to catch up. But like
Mm-hmm.
we always have to keep reminding ourselves, like, look, if you're looking at the preseason testing results, I mean, like the top, let's see, 1, 2,
Mm-hmm.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The top like 8 times. Okay, the fastest time was a 129.9, but
Mm-hmm.
then the rest of those 7 times were in the 130s. They were separated by tenths of a second. Like like these are close margins. Like I don't even think
Mm-hmm.
anybody can think a tenth of a second. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's the margins are so close, but it's like that's what's funny. It's like Formula One's like because of those margins being so close, it's hard to kind of think about it in terms of like, it feels like last year Red Bull were like, miles ahead of everyone. In certain ways they were, but like if you compare the lap times, like you're only maybe talking like, at the most a second, which
Yeah.
in F1 terms is a lot, but in like
That's yeah.
reality terms, a second goes by constantly. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't think about it. So it's just kind of funny how like they are performing at such a high level, and these things are incredibly fast, and they're really not that far off from each other.
Yeah.
I think if you did that thing where you put all of the ghosts of the cars driving
Mm-hmm.
around the track at the same time, I mean, you see those first top 7 just almost go by in a cluster
Like,
together.
yeah, they're all right there. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we have to just kind of keep that sort of perspective that it's like, it's not that Ferrari or Red Bull or Mercedes is like so off the pace that it's embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that Red Bull last year just had that little extra sauce, that little extra spice that just made it work. It just made the difference to where like Vin Diesel says, it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile, winning is winning. You know what I mean? Like that's it's it's true. It's true.
Yeah. So that's a really good analysis. I would say this is why I think it's really important that when Lewis gets to Ferrari, that within his tenure that they win at least one, if not multiple times. Because I think that would be such an injection of adrenaline into like the corpse that is Ferrari right now.
Yeah.
That it would things would change, man. Like I think you'd see Ferrari fans coming out of the woodwork, like people who wear Mercedes jerseys just take off their jerseys. Oh, I've been a Ferrari fan the entire time. People with their Red Bull jerseys, or even their orange army Verstappen shirts, like, yeah, I've always been a Tifosi, right? Like, I think it would just be so important for Ferrari, but also I think Formula One in general, because I like the two are like so interlinked, right? That it is kind of a shame that we haven't seen a Ferrari title in a long time. Like, and I say that not as a Ferrari fan, but more so as a fan of the sport and like the history, right? And like there's definitely like an allure to it, right? There's you want to hear like those big title contenders, right? It's kind of like if you look at when you look at like basketball, right? Like, the Lakers, they win a title, or the or the Celtics, or if you look at MLB, the Yankees or the Red Sox, right? Like there are names that you expect to hear multiple times winning titles because they just have such a winning culture, or they have such an environment that cultivates like just greatness, right? And for Ferrari to be on the pedestal that it is without having had that success for this long, it's shocking, right? Because 2007 was their last title, right? We're 17 years. It's been 17 years since they've won, right? And dude, that's 2 decades. That's a long time. That's a long time. And they were close, like back in like 2017, 2018, until Vettel like spun out at the German Grand Prix, and that was like the closest they've been. And that's been what, 7-8 years since then.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how long have I been watching Formula One? Like 14 years now.
Yeah, since like 2010ish, right?
And literally in that entire time, there's only been 2 teams that have won world championships: Red Bull and Mercedes. I have not witnessed and if you think it, like if I had started watching in even 5 years earlier, or
same thing.
1, 2. If I had been watching 5 years earlier, like let's say like I was in 8th grade and I started watching, right? I would have witnessed Renault winning championship. I would have witnessed McLaren winning championship. I would have witnessed Ferrari winning a championship. I would have witnessed Braun GP winning a championship, and Mercedes and Red Bull.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like there are people who have been watching for that long that are like used to seeing like the torch being passed to like
really quickly.
Pretty quickly. I mean, obviously Ferrari had a string of success in the early 2000s, but even that party got spoiled. And what's interesting is that we have not seen a instance where there has been a team that's shown up that's won like 2 in a row and then fades. You know what I mean? Like Renault winning 2 in a row, or 2 or 3, and then it's like, okay, like they don't, they've kind of just, they kind of get pushed into the background. So it's like, yeah, I mean, that could very well be like Hamilton's intention. Like, he talks about this being a new chapter in his life and he being the one that decides that. And I mean, I respect him for that. And I mean, this could be a situation where he jumps in, they come to grips the first year, maybe he doesn't win the championship that first year, but the next year, the Ferrari fights back and they, Hamilton gets his 8th, and then he retires, or maybe he sticks around to try and fight for a 9th, and Charles Leclerc takes it, and then Lewis Hamilton's like, okay, I'm good. Like, that's Good for
And
Charles. Let's go.
yeah,
I'm out of here. So, or maybe he just jumps back to McLaren just to be like, okay, let's just like hang around here
let's
for a
close it.
while, and then
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
close it off after a couple of years, because I'm sure
yeah,
McLaren would love to have him back.
yeah,
Even though they've got Lando, who is, I swear, if Lando doesn't get a race win this year,
dude.
I'm gonna be
I
really
mean, yeah,
like, that guy deserves it. I
yeah,
mean, he worked so hard. He's dedicated so much of his time and
yeah,
effort into McLaren. Oh, well, that's actually, you know what? That's a
yeah.
good question. Well, there's two things I want to talk to you about. So the
Hmm.
first thing I want to ask you is, who do you think has the potential to win a race this year?
Ooh, okay. Um, hmm. I think clearly both Ferrari drivers and well, it goes without saying, both Max and Checo can win races this year.
Right.
But if we're talking about people who will finish outside of the top two positions, both Ferrari drivers have a good shot. I think Carlos and Charles. I think Carlos really has to show something this year, unfortunately,
Hmm.
because of him being cut at the end of the season, right? To make
Right.
him make a case of this is why you should bring me on. I bring experience and expertise, right? Charles, I think, is gonna have a much better time this season. I I feel like anytime a driver goes through like a rough season like he did last year, they kind of come in
Hmm.
with a more cool headed approach, and that should
Hmm.
hopefully pay dividends for him this season. Um, if the Mercedes are running decently, right? If they caught up to the Ferraris, I think they have a shot. I think Fernando, depending on how the Aston Martin develops the season, I think he has a good shot. Um, I think this is a wild one. I'm curious to see what Danny can do in the VCARB. I don't know if he'll necessarily win a race,
Hmm.
but I think he can get a podium. I think that'd be
Hmm.
huge. If the car ends up running like how I feel like it can,
Yeah.
um, and then did I say the McLarens yet? I think depending on
Yeah.
how the McLarens develop, we
Mhm.
could see we could see a Lando Norris win. At
Mhm.
least some more podiums, and I think we can get a couple of Oscar Piastri podiums. But
Okay.
yeah, teams. I think there are clearly some drivers that just Lance Stroll. I don't know. I don't know if he has what it takes to keep up with Fernando and extract every bit of performance from the Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Haas is just dead last. I don't expect anything from the Alpines. Williams, I think they're like square midfield fighting. Um,
Mhm.
and the Stake F1 cars, nah, I'm not expecting much from them. But
Mhm.
that's kind of my thought on things right now. I think really look out for the Ferraris this year. Mercedes maybe if they do something good, and McLaren. Just those four
Mhm.
teams really.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
you?
Kevin Magnussen, 2024 world champion. No, no.
Yo, they did him dirty when he got pole position and it was a sprint
Yeah.
race weekend. I'm so
Yeah.
angry about that, right? Like it was a feeling that was like bottled lightning, right?
Hmm.
And you know what they say
Yeah.
about lightning? You can only bottle it twice, right?
Right. 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 You're right. Right.
That's some FUFO lore for you guys. But
Yeah.
like they had that like lightning bottled, and then they just completely squandered it because it was a sprint race weekend. They
Yeah.
didn't even let it have its full like that feeling could not run its course, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Ugh.
No, but for real, if there's anything that I feel like I could give a solid prediction of, I would
Mhm.
say that Yuki Tsunoda is going to get at least a podium appearance this year.
Oh, I would love to see that. That's a
I mean,
strong claim.
his time and during testing was seventh,
Hmm.
and that's not bad. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And if they're if they're fighting squarely in the midfield, all they need is just a turn one collision between three drivers, and Yuki Tsunoda could be up to third. So, yeah, I'm thinking that Yuki's going to get at least a podium. I'm expecting to see at least one race win from Lando Norris if we can pull it off.
Mm.
Maybe Silverstone. We'll see. Um, And then if there's anything else, I mean, obviously I want to see a Alonso win. I'd like to see Hamilton at least get another win.
Mm.
Um, I think Hamilton getting at least one more win at like Silverstone in the Mercedes would be a nice send off for him for the team.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we'll see something like that. But yeah, I'm trying to keep my expectations kind of low because I don't want to disappoint myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think Lance Stroll is going to do anything. And I don't expect pretty much anybody else to move too much more or have any sort of like, shocking, if Bottas wins a race, that's awesome, but I don't expect it to happen.
Yeah.
Well, the next thing I was going to ask you,
Mm-hmm.
because we did this around this time last year, and I just want to check in with you because, well, we're talking about cars and teams and drivers changing things up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any changes to your F1 team and title sponsor and driver lineup? Because I certainly do.
All right. All right. Let's hear yours first, and then I will quickly jot down my thoughts on who. Because last year
Okay.
I was Sega Taco Bell, right?
Yes. Well, the first thing is Fisher Racing Enterprises
Ooh. Okay.
is glad to is really happy to announce our new partnering with our new title sponsor, Liquid Death. We're very happy. We're very happy to be partnering with Liquid Death, and we're also super excited to unveil our new car design. Which if you haven't seen it, if you're unfamiliar, do yourself a favor and type in the Aero F1 A2 car from 1979, because that is exactly what it's going to look like.
Mm.
And in addition to Liquid Death being a new title sponsor, I'm also going to be sponsored. We're also happy to be welcoming aboard Hot Wheels, and yeah, Hot Wheels is pretty much going to be the extra one I'm thinking of. Yeah, it's Liquid Death and Hot Wheels. I think is going to be my new title sponsors in the Arrows A2 from 1979. And driver lineup. My new driver lineup. Happy to announce. I'm going to have Sebastian Vettel. And Jensen Button as I'm sorry, Idris, he's moved over from Sega Taco Bell.
Well, this is news to me because I thought we had a multi-year contract, and he might be in breach.
No, you didn't read his tweet where he said that that you might think that Sega Taco Bell was going to be retaining him, but that's not accurate. I'm gonna get the two nice guys of F1 on my team. Is what's happening.
All right. Okay. So this year, the Psycho Taco Bell F1 team has been reformed. We have a team that has come back from the graveyard. They have dusted off their plans for being a Formula One team, and fully works team here. So Toyota, folks, is back. We have the Toyota F1 team. Because we have a works team coming in, we don't need as many sponsors, but Sega has still decided to stay on, so we still have the Sega Toyota F1 team here. And we have brought on Willie Ribs as team principal. I'm the CEO. I'm CEO, of the team.
All right.
We have Willie Ribs as team principal here. Watch the documentary Uppity if you are not in the know. And let's see, drivers that we'll be bringing in. I will say it was quite a shock when we found out that Jensen Button was departing our team, but that's okay. It's he's still a beloved member of the Toyota F1 team family. But replacing him, we have Mr. Nico Rosberg coming out of retirement to help develop the team.
Nico Rosberg.
He has decided that actually I'm a little bored and I want to come back and make sure that I'm able to make sure I'm able to help develop a new team and get them to where they need to be.
Oh
And then,
boy.
folks, I know that might be a bit of a spicy take, but just
Uh-huh.
just
Oh
because
yeah.
he'll push people. And you know, someone has decided to take a chance on someone that we've been big fans of here on the podcast for a long while. And ladies and gentlemen, that is Miss Jamie Chadwick. She will be joining F1
Nice.
as our second driver on the second Toyota F1 team.
That's
Um,
an interesting combo.
yeah, interesting combo. You know, we have someone who is new to the world of F1 in the sense of actually driving the car, and we have a vet. We have a former world champion who can instill that knowledge and winning mindset into a young a young rising talent.
Hmm. Are you is he are you gonna make sure he's gonna be able to wear a mask, right?
Yeah,
If he
no,
needs to.
we have stipulated in our contract that he must be vaccinated. He will be. We'll make sure that Nico Rosberg is a Moderna mommy, and
A Moderna
yeah, and
mommy.
Jamie, she can be a Pfizer
Uh,
poppy.
okay. That's fun. All right, I'm excited to see this. Yeah, I'm excited. Any changes to your car at all?
Let's see. What did I go with last year? I think I went with the
It was the Williams, I think, right?
the
From like
Williams.
20. Um, I think it was like yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure it was the Williams. I think from like
Oh, yeah, it was like a
2011,
20.
maybe
Yeah, yeah,
2010 or
something like
something.
that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this year we're going with the chassis based off of the McLaren MP44. That's,
Okay,
that's love it or leave
all
it.
right. Chassis, McLaren chassis, Toyota engine.
Yes.
Yeah, no, my engine supplier is Mazda. I've brought them into Formula One, so
Ah,
that's what's
okay.
happening
A
here.
Ford. Okay, so I guess they're getting a head start. Head start being an
No,
F1.
I said Mazda.
Yeah, Mazda. Yeah. So Ford owns Mazda. Ford owns
Oh,
like
do they?
yeah, like a majority shareholder.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Oh, snap. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that's fine. Just get just gonna have a rotary F1 engine.
Mm.
Um,
The Venkel engine.
is a vehicle engine. Um, all right. Well, thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to our preseason test. We are F1 or F off. If you you can find us anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. If you want to hit us up, you can find us on Instagram. You can find us on TikTok. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Threads. You can find us on X, which funny thing, during the Drive to Survive episodes when they'd pull up social media posts, right? They were clearly on X, I think, because it was X at this point. They still do the
Yeah,
noise.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's like nobody believes it's X. So we're still gonna say it's Twitter. But anywhere else, we're all at F1 or F off, and that's F number one or F off. You can email us at F1 or F off podcast at gmail.com. Please give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Let your friends know, let your family know, let your barber know, let the lady that runs the coffee shop down the street know, let your crush know at school. Just let everybody know. And we greatly appreciate that. So yeah. Thank you.
Peace.
Peace out.